Olá, eu sou o professor Julio Garcia e estou aqui novamente fazendo uma visita à Faculdade de Direito da Universidade da Flórida, o Levin College of Law. Desta vez com a oportunidade de conversarmos com os professores Timothy McLendon e com a professora Danaya Wright, ambos professores do programa, e que estarão recepcionando os brasileiros que desejam participar do Summer Program de 2025. Esse é um curso especial de uma semana que é realizado há mais de 20 anos aqui na Universidade da Flórida e que neste ano vai trazer uma série de temas atuais sobre o direito norte-americano e que são de interesse dos pesquisadores e profissionais do direito brasileiros. Então acompanhe com a gente agora a conversa que nós tivemos com o professor Timothy McLendon a respeito do direito constitucional americano e do que podemos esperar sobre o programa de 2025 e também uma conversa com a professora Danaya Wright a respeito dos temas de herança de direitos imobiliários, de propriedades e da expectativa dela também para o evento deste ano. Here we are with Professor Timothy McLendon from the University of Florida at the Levin College of Law in this beautiful library. Professor Tim, thank you for having the time to have this conversation.
Thank you, Professor Garcia. It's a pleasure to see you again up here in Florida. Appreciate your coming.
Why we are talking today is actually to introduce and present more about the summer program that you have been putting in place for the previous 20 years or more.
Actually, since 2000, I think, was the first year. The summer program in American law for Brazilian judges, prosecutors, and attorneys.
That's amazing. And we're going to have a new edition this year, 2025, last week of June. Mm-hmm. And we would like to learn a little bit more about what to expect from this year and also know a little bit more about your participation as a professor on constitutional law. So to start that, I would like first to know a little bit more about you, to introduce it to the audience.
Okay, my name's Tim McLendon. I have been for 30 years, I've been a staff attorney and now assistant director of the Center for Governmental Responsibility, which is a legal policy research institute that's attached to the University of Florida Levin College of Law. I'm also a legal skills professor, so I teach state constitutional law, Florida. I teach legal writing to first-year students, both objective and persuasive legal writing. I teach some seminars on historic preservation, Latin American law and policy. A lot of that work that I teach is an outgrowth of the work that I've done over many years with the center.
That's great. And a little bit about the law course you have here in the Levin College. We know that you have a very well-respected position in the country. Can you tell us a little bit about that, like how you're ranked and how do you position as a law course in the U.S.?
Well, the Levin College of Law is the the University of Florida is the oldest university in the state of Florida. The College of Law has existed since 1909. It's the top-ranked law school in the state of Florida. It's ranked in the top 30 in the United States and much higher among the public universities. It's a very strong in some certain areas, especially tax, traditionally environmental law, some other programs too.
And I know that during the summer program, there are a lot of classes that the Brazilian lawyers, prosecutors, and judges can participate here.
Yeah, the structure of the summer program, we start here at the College of Law in Gainesville, and we have classes here at the college for the first 3 days, usually, most of the day. Taught by faculty who are professors or practitioners here in Florida, and with consecutive translation. It's done by some of the Brazilian organizers. And then the second half of the week, then we move and it's become site visits. So we go visit the courts here in Gainesville, the state courts, looking usually at some criminal law matters, sometimes some family law matters as well, whatever else is happening. Sometimes with the state attorney, that's the state prosecutor, local government, City Hall, talking about that. The The Water Management District is another place that we visit, and it's a good introduction to administrative law as it's practiced and how that works, how it interacts with both the statutes and some of the other things. And it's in an area of water management that's a peculiar, I think, interest and significance both in Florida and in Brazil. So it kind of rings two bells. Sometimes we've gone to the jail, depending on the interest of the people who are coming. We end up in Tampa, and both at the federal courthouse, sometimes at the U.S., the federal prosecutors, sometimes the Water Management District. But that kind of first half of the week is all courses. Second half of the week is mainly site visits.
And one of those classes I know is related to constitutional law, and you present that.
I usually start the summer program with a session on introducing the American legal system, and then as part of that, federal
Right.
constitutional law is sort of a part of that. It kind of works together. And if you think about it, Brazil and the United States were both federal systems, but it's a very different type of federation, the powers of the states versus the federal government, whether or not the municipalities have a recognized existence as they do in your system. They don't in ours. The municipalities are creatures of state law. And so I think that part is a very interesting thing, the fact that in the United States there are essentially 51 different legal systems that operate parallel to each other. They interact in some ways, but the federal system sits on top of the 50 different states.
So when you highlight that difference, I assume that the constitutional state law is much more important in the U.S. legal system because of its, I wouldn't say autonomy, but because every state has its own constitutional rules, right?
Yeah, every state does, and part of it is knowing that there are some areas where the federal law is most important. There's a supremacy of the federal Constitution, but just there's the way it has grown organically. In some areas, basic criminal law, for example, property law, inheritance and stuff like that, basic contracts and trade, state law is the most important player. And then you get some other things that the federal law is most important. A lot of the big environmental laws are federal. And there's state laws within that, but they fit within a federal framework. But securities, things that go across in multiple states, often that's a federal issue. Federal constitutional rights, of course, that is a preeminently federal issue. And so one of the things is highlighting those differences. And it's always interesting depending on what's going on. So right now, there is a fascinating, just with the new administration that has come in, there's some fascinating disputes at the federal level about separation of powers. The power of the judiciary versus the executive. Congress is somewhat dormant, hasn't really weighed in, but sometimes it's the president operating under a statute, so theoretically they're together. And so it'd be interesting, and that will undoubtedly come up in the conversation, just how our separation of powers works. And it works sort of differently at the federal system versus the state level.
And it's a precedent system, and you have a long history with this constitutional system. So I wonder, do you have any precedents in history of this type of dispute between the powers, and how important that is to the maturity of the system?
We have a long history of those disputes. In fact, judicial review began with one of those type of disputes, with the judiciary weighing in on executive action. And then also, though, having to be wise and prudent in terms of how it weighed in, setting a principle, but did it want to pick an all-out battle with the other branches? And that's part of the interesting discussion that we're having on the national level right now.
That's great. So for the summer program this year, what is the message you want to leave for those?
We are planning on the summer program having it the last week of June up here in Gainesville, and we certainly welcome Brazilian judges and prosecutors and attorneys, jurists to take part. The program will be, for the most part, in English with consecutive translation into Portuguese. We think it's accessible. We think it's It's an interesting mix of courses that we try to keep relevant and would welcome participation.
Well, thank you very much for having us, and hopefully we see you again in the summer program this year.
Thank you, Professor Garcia.
Well, Professor Danaya Wright, thank you for having us here at Levin College of Law. And we are here to talk a little bit about your research, and especially the opportunity for Brazilian lawyers, judges, and prosecutors to visit the University of Florida for a special summer program. So I would like to start asking a little bit about your career, and so to introduce you to our audience.
Great. I'm just excited that you're here and excited the chance to talk with you. I've been at the University of Florida for 27 years now, and I teach property, constitutional law, and trusts and estates. I'm also recently, about the last 5 years, I have become the director of our Center for Governmental Responsibility, which is a center that is engaged in cross-border collaborations on improving legal processes and legal structures for everybody's benefit.
Well, the summer program is a program that has been put in place for the past 20 or plus years. And I would just love to hear you a little bit more about what is the importance, why it is important for both the visitors and the University of Florida having this program.
Yeah, no, this is an amazing program, honestly. I think what's really important about the summer program is it gives us an opportunity to talk with experts across the world. In our case, it's Brazil and the United States primarily, to talk about how to solve problems that we are experiencing here, you may be experiencing there. We come from similar and yet different legal systems. So how can we really learn from one another? And it's so much easier to do that in a room with problems. Everybody comes to the table and we talk about how we can solve things.
And what can we expect hearing from you about your current research?
So one of the things I'm really involved in is what's called heirs property. So this is a situation where a landowner, usually a homeowner, owns a home, passes away, and their heirs, their children, descendants, whoever would be entitled to take it, that person does not probate the property, doesn't clear title, just lives in the home and carries on. So all of the title documents are still in the name of the deceased owner, but the people who are living there have legal rights to the property, but they haven't been proven, they haven't been established, they haven't been perfected, and the records are incomplete, which makes it very difficult for those people to get mortgages, to get disaster relief if there's a problem. They can't even get insurance, and obviously if they want to mortgage the property or sell the property, it's very difficult. And when a home is in this status, in this heirs property situation, it's much more vulnerable to being lost. Lost to the family, lost at tax sale, lost at foreclosure, some sort of the variety of ways in which this property can be lost, which then exacerbates the affordable housing crisis. So one of the things I've been working on in my own research is thinking about different ways that we can help minimize the harm, make it easier for the family members to probate these properties, possibly cut off claims of certain remote heirs, just a variety of possible ideas for how we can solve some of these problems. And the problems are worse in some states than in others. So we can experiment with the 50 states here in this country, but you in Brazil have a similar problem. And learning how you all are addressing or thinking about addressing some of these problems would be a great opportunity for me to then be able to say, hey, this has worked in another regime, and can we bring these ideas to bear to improve the law here, and vice versa.
Right, and how big is this problem?
It's huge. It's really huge. It's very huge in the southeastern part of the United States. I would say as much as 5% to 10% of land in Florida is potentially in this heirs property status. Millions and millions of acres of Black-owned farmland has already been lost, and efforts are being made to try to restore some of that land. I think we're all seeing it. We all know what Airbnb is, and we all know what VRBO is. But what's happened is a lot of people owned a home, the owner died, the family failed to probate it, it ended up ultimately going to a tax sale or foreclosure, and then some investment corporation bought it up and has now converted it into short-term rentals. And so we've all probably stayed in one of these homes, but when you have these short-term rentals, the family no longer has the right to live in the home, so they've lost their home, but it's also not available for long-term rentals either. And so this is a problem in this country, and it's a problem across the country.
Right, and it looks like there's a socio-economical cause related to that.
Yeah.
And do you see kind of any fixing that law can help? How do you see the future for trying to solve such a big problem?
So it's going to take many different approaches to solve the problem. So one is money. Money's always a good solution. One thing that has been, one solution that's been offered is to provide loans to help pay delinquent property taxes, various loans to help people cover the cost of probate, loans or assistance, financial assistance to help with the probate process, to hire lawyers. But there are other ways in which legal change itself can really matter, can really help. So a big piece of this, I think, is just the administrative difficulty of probate. It's very difficult in Florida, for instance, if someone is a homeowner, to transfer that home outside of probate without having to go through court supervision and all of that process. It's very difficult to do the estate planning up front to allow the home to pass automatically to the next generation. So legal change, by giving options for what are called transfer on death deeds, beneficiary deeds for real estate, for instance, that's a very simple way to provide an alternative for people to enable the property to pass very quickly and very easily without needing to go through this very cumbersome and expensive probate process. Now, that doesn't solve the problems for all the pieces that are already there, but it does help for the future situations. So we need to solve the problems for the people that are already in heirs property status as well.
So hopefully this is one of the topics
Yes.
that you would present in the next summer program. And you have the opportunity to go a little bit deeper, of course,
Yes.
and having the interaction and exchange with the Brazilian scholars, lawyers, and legal professionals that come here, right?
Very excited to do that. I've already had some interactions with some of the Brazilian scholars in the, I guess it was last summer's program. And it was fascinating to learn, one, that you all have a very similar problem, but different solutions are available. And I would love the opportunity to have 2 or 3 hours to pick everybody's brains, to sit around a table and try to come up with solutions and learn from cross-border neighbors, learn from them. So I really look forward to this summer's summer program.
Well, Professor Wright, thank you so much for having this conversation. And hopefully we'll meet all together next summer program, last week of June 2025.
Yes, I'm very excited. Can't wait to be there. Looking forward to answers.